Welcome back to the debrief this week for the IFSC Briancon Lead World Cup. My name's Tyler Norton from Plastic Weekly, and this is John Burgman, freelance writer, reporter, all things climbing aficionado, social media phenom with those stories, man. Before we start, I think this is the first time, and I mean we've only been doing this for a season, but this is the first time where I want to tell people don't watch this until you've watched the comp, because this was a really exciting World Cup finals.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When we get to the grades at the very end, we'll talk about some things that maybe it made it sort of lower the grade a little bit, unfortunately, because I think if some things had gone the other way, this would be probably the most exciting comp that we've seen, or at least certainly that I've seen, I feel like in recent memory. It was just great. We'll get into it in detail. Awesome route setting, exciting results. So there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, let's. We're doing this new thing where we're starting with the headlines rather than leaving our best moments to the end. So last week I started. So this week, what was your big takeaway from Briancon?
Sure, there are a lot of different storylines, a lot of stuff that we could talk about, and we probably will get into. But to me, the big thing that I come away from, the big headline is, we are officially halfway done with this lead season, right? We've had three events. There are
three
more
to
go. There's one in Slovenia, one in China, and one in Japan, I think is the order.
Yeah.
So you might know where I'm going with this. My big headline is that Janja Garnbret is actually behind in the overall lead 2019 season scores. That is, to me, that's jaw-dropping, because if you had asked anybody a month ago, 2 months ago, I don't think anybody would have maybe people wouldn't have predicted that she was going to sweep the lead season like she did the bouldering season. Maybe that was a little unrealistic, but to say that she would be behind in the scores at the midway point, I don't think anybody could have predicted this.
Isn't that wild? Because before we would say, how crazy is it that somebody has the potential to sweep a boulder season and a World Cup season? And now, once we just got settled into the idea of like, yeah, this is just going to happen to us, then all of a sudden other contenders show up and suddenly everything like flips on its head. And now we're amazed that it's not going to happen. Whereas, after Villars, we were like, yeah, this could go. This could be every single event swept by one person.
And the headline being about Janja being behind, that says nothing about the person who's in the lead, which is Cheon So, who is just kind of emerged like this firecracker. Suddenly she's here. She's just I don't know if I can ever remember somebody making such a sort of stamping their presence so early on on the circuit. I mean, to do that well in just when literally 3.5 weeks ago, most people watching these competitions had never heard of her. I think remarkable.
I mean, Janja is certainly one of them. I think Joanna Ernst as well. Like, she was at her first event of eligibility and she won it, I think in China in like 2008 or 2006 or something. But it is unreal, coming out of nowhere. I was kind of torn between two headlines. One of them is Janja must be suffering from the most unreal PTSD from 2018, where she had those two instances in the last half of the year where she tops the final climb, and that's not enough for her to win. And Xiamen, it happened also at the World Championships in lead. And now all over again, where you do, like, you have an excellent comp and you manage to top the finals, but it's just still not enough. But the other one was Team Japan, even with all of their superstars training for the World Championships, still come in and like sweep a World Cup podium. Hasn't happened since, I think, 2006. I didn't know any of these guys. And in fairness, Nishida, he came fourth a couple times last year, and all three of them have attended World Cups and made finals before. But just like all the people at this comp, and then it just the three people that I couldn't. The winner, like Nishida Hidemasa, was 19th in qualifiers, just squeaked into finals in 8th place, and then throws down the gauntlet and just wins the thing. Nobody can match him. It's just unreal, man.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about this Japanese team, you look at all of these new names, and I think Hidemasa Nishida's like 16 years old. I think like last week, Marie, wasn't she like 15 years old?
Mm-hmm.
So not only are they dominant now, I think there's reason to believe that they're going to be dominant for years to come, right? And
Absolutely. Like this podium. So Nishida Hidemasa in first place was born in 2002. In second place, Hiroto Shimizu is born in 96. And then Shuda Tanaka is born in 2000, right?
yeah,
So like the oldest climber here, born in 96. Like that's it's just absurd, man.
I
And
mean
all
and it's not at all out of the question to think that one of these competitors in Japan on the Japanese team who's 15 years old or 16 years old, if they keep competing, they could be they could be successful on the comp scene until they're 25, 20. This could be we could be witnessing like the start of a kind of a 9 or 10 year progression for some of these competitors. It's I mean, we sound like a broken record because we keep saying the depth of the Japanese team is incredible, but it feels like every competition that we have, it's like they just keep making that statement again and again. New name.
You know that GIF where it's like a row of like Pikachu mascots like walking down a street and they just go on forever. I almost tweeted that out as like that being the Japanese like climbing scene. It's just an endless parade of climbers coming up. If you lose your top 10, there's another 10 like ready to come in behind them. It's getting silly, man.
It really is, and I want to go back to something you said about when you were talking about Yanya and Cheon.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's really interesting to note is that the first few competitions of this lead season, it has not been. I mean, I know Yanya had her trouble in Chamonix a week ago. She had kind of that slip, didn't make it into finals. Whatever. That's she's human. It's a kind of a one-time thing. But I think the thing that amazes me is that it doesn't seem to be so much that Yanya is slipping as much as Cheon has kind of risen to her level. And I think there's an important distinction there, because that just means that I think in the coming years, the caliber of climber on the World Cup scene is going to just be better and better and better. Does that make sense? I mean, it's almost like
oh, totally.
You think with Yanya, let's compare it to other sports. It's like, okay, you have somebody like a Michael Jordan or somebody, just one person, this kind of outlier who's great. Well, but then what happens when you have two of them? You have two people that are that good, all right, and then like a couple years later, you have three people that are that good. It's like that's a little different thing, and that's going to really raise the bar of the skill level. I mean, we've seen it already. The route setters are having trouble separating Yanya and Cheon, right? In the finals here, they both topped it, and in I think in maybe like one of the qualification rounds, they both topped it. So we're gonna have to get some.
It's hard for me, like measuring somebody's level is so difficult for somebody like me. Like it's because the route changes every time. You don't have a barometer from the past, and it's the same struggle that the route setters have to deal with every single week. Of okay, they didn't do well last week at this event, but was it the route? Was it the temps? Was it the conditions? Was it their there's so many different components. So I have a really hard time judging that. Although you do start to hear commentators and people saying, it feels like Yanya isn't at form. It feels like maybe doing that entire boulder season and then trying to do the entire lead season heading into the World Championships, maybe that just puts such a load on you that you can't be at your very best. And it's entirely reasonable that somebody like Yanya can say, okay, I'm going to train super hard and do all the comps, and even if I'm not at 100%, I could still sweep the season. Like that was a genuinely reasonable possibility going into this. I don't know if she would have seen this contender showing up, but yeah, that's entirely fair that it could be Chaehyun coming up. But I think there is an element to Yanya is under a ton of physical stress. Like she's 3 weeks away from one of the biggest events ever held in rock climbing with the World Championships. So it's a little hard to tell. Chaehyun didn't do the boulder season at all. She came into this effectively, as far as I can tell, looking to be a lead climber and then maybe seeing what happens at the World Championships, because as I mentioned earlier, she is registered for all three disciplines at the World Championships. So that's something to be psyched about. But I don't know which it is. I'm sure it is a bit of both, where you have just an incredibly talented climber at their peak, as well as a veteran who is not quite at their peak, but still a formidable contender.
Yeah, and this is where we it puts Yanya in an interesting position. We haven't really seen her in this position yet. This whole 2019 season, we didn't even see her that much. We rarely have seen her in this position, kind of in recent memory, where she's I don't know if underdog is the right word, but she's certainly chasing rather than sitting atop the throne.
Yeah.
Right. And so we get to see a little bit of a different side of her, kind of that competitive side, that mental side. How does she deal with this? How does she deal with chasing as opposed to being the front runner, being the leader?
It gets me so excited seeing somebody like that who, aside from her victories, is obviously somebody that works incredibly hard and has a really good mentality. It makes me so excited to see her having to chase something. And you are right that she is the underdog now. Even though this season is really only based off of 3 performances so far. And one of them was, maybe a fairly pedestrian slip that every once in a while happens to everyone. Chaehyun is the favorite, even just like by the eye test, right? Like there is no visible struggle in the climbing of Chaehyun. We see Yanya over the last couple comps show moments of looking pumped, looking tired. This event in particular, we'll show some video. Well, let's just talk about it right now. So Yanya goes into finals in 3rd place. So she needs to do well and needs Natsuki Tani and Chaehyun Seo to not do as well. And so this is Yanya. What an excellent climb, by the way. Like when I talked about this being an exciting finals, it all came down to the head wall for both of the men and women. And because you only have to focus on really a particular area, each of these holds created so much meaning. So right here, Yanya is already in 1st place. And now she's only got like 4 or 5 moves to get through to the final. Every single one of these pinches and crimps started to have meaning based on how previous climbers had gotten. The high points were easy to keep track of, and the crowd is going like absolutely insane as this is happening right now. The mic, like the crowd mics are clipping. It's so loud. Yeah. And then of course the final move, what an incredibly ballsy move for root setters to set, just putting a dyno at the finish. And of course what made this crazy and what gives you that sense of, man, Yanya maybe isn't perfect right now. She's on the finish hold. She's needing to chalk up and shake out before she can clip that draw, right? This is where it got really stressful. and I've mentioned that quick draws are like the unsung hero of lead comps. This could have been one of those moments, right? Where maybe she doesn't actually score the top if she doesn't clip that. But yeah.
That was phenomenal. That moment, I don't know what it timed out to be. It was probably like 4 seconds or something in between her getting the hold and having to do the clip draw. But as I was watching it, it felt like minutes. I was just, it's like time slowed down. I was on the edge of my seat. That is what, to me, that is kind of the essence of what comp climbing is, what makes comp climbing exciting. And it was really interesting because that move, it's like that's as flashy as you can get, having the final move be this big dyno. And yet I think most of the story up to that point about the route setting had been that the route setting typical for Briancon is it's very traditional, for lack of a better word. It's technical, it's crimpy. The commentators kept saying that this didn't have a lot of the quote Hollywood style moves. There weren't crazy 360 campus things and dynos midway and all that stuff. So it was like this really old school style route up until that last move, and then it's like we're gonna have them dyno to this volume and then make it really tricky to clip. I thought that was kind of a nice little surprise.
Right here after Yanya's top, Natsuki Tani is 2nd place, and she just doesn't have the energy even to set herself up properly for the dyno. Like I think if Natsuki looks at that video of her making that attempt, she would look at her body position and say, okay, I was definitely way too tunnel visioned. I was pumped out of my mind and just not making the good decisions, because it was a really not a great setup for that jump for Natsuki. And so that leaves it down to the very last climber, those moments we love, that bottom of the 9th, bases loaded kind of situation. And it comes down to Chaehyun. And this was like, I think this was the most tense I've been, like that good kind of excited, that like edge of your seat, like genuine edge of your seat kind of situation, and that comes up so rarely in these climbs. So I'm just gonna, this is Chaehyun from about 1/3 of the way up. It's at 2 times speed, so you can just get a sense of the climb. But go ahead, John, if you have any comments.
I was just gonna say it kind of reminds you of the Meiringen World Cup for bouldering when Andra came out last. I kind of had that same kind of feeling, maybe even a little more so now, because we've had the whole Yanya storyline play out so far for 2019. We didn't really have any of that for any competitor at Meiringen. But it's just so great when the last climber out has to do well, especially when it's somebody like Chae-hyun, who we know. It's interesting because it's like we knew she could do well, because she had obviously won the week before and she had done great in the semifinals. But I think up until this point, for me, there was still kind of a little bit of question, because it's like, had she still kind of captured lightning in a bottle and just gotten, for lack of a better word, not, lucky, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
That's not quite the right word, but it's like, okay, she won a comp, she did well in the semis, but like, now the pressure is really on, probably unlike anything she's ever felt before. More expectations than she's ever felt before. I was really curious and wondering how she was going to handle it. And she climbs here. She's 15 years old. She climbs here like she's 30 and has been climbing for 20 years or whatever. It's just, this was amazing.
And especially after seeing last week Yanya fall apart in that climb where there was all that anticipation of, oh, she's obviously going to top that. It was that one of those important reminders that says, okay, things can fall apart anytime, right? But she made this look so excellent, and it really was just the jump that had the suspense. And of course, she makes the clip look so clean, and that was kind of what made it clear that when she got to the top, she was in a better state. She probably survived that climb with more physical integrity than Yanya did. And it was just like, and we haven't seen, Chae-hyun's win wasn't against Yanya Garnbret last week. Yanya had an unfortunate fall. She wasn't at her best. She had much left in her in semifinals. So there were a lot of what ifs that come with that. This is one of those climbs where it is more convincing. We saw them on the same route. We got to compare their styles and how they coped with it. Would have been nice if it was like an extra 10 feet tall, so we could maybe actually like see where they would fall in certain spots. But just how convincing her clip was at the top, whereas Yanya's was fairly desperate in comparison. That sold it for me. That's what makes it exciting, and it just clearly it may have been suspicion, it may have been fandom before, where I was fairly certain that Chae-hyun was the one leading. But now, going into the World Championships in only 3 weeks, I have to say that Chae-hyun is the favorite for at least the lead championship.
And the World Championships, it's funny because literally for years now, I have been looking forward to this World Championship. If people are watching and they don't know, this is the first official qualifying event for the Olympics, where we're going to start seeing some competitors who earn those Olympic berths. The Olympic Tokyo 2020 climbing being included was first announced in 2016. So it has been literally years waiting for this event to actually take place. I've been excited for it for years and counting down to it. But now with this exciting, the exciting standings in the lead season and the World Championships being this outlier that's not actually part of the Lead World Cup circuit, it's almost like I'm now feeling this feeling of like, well, okay, forget about the World Championships. I want to see how the rest of the lead season plays out. Like, let's get to that Slovenia Lead World Cup as soon as possible. Yeah. Because I want to see this rivalry between Yanya and Chae-hyun continuing.
It is unfortunate that we don't get to have it in this one swoop. Like, it really does feel like things could certainly change before we get into the last half. And that I'm always kind of like a little bit bothered by that kind of thing where it is two separate chapters and it feels like you have one prize for two kind of distinct seasons, which is a little bit weird. But I am happy that the World Championships are here. It's a big prize always. And so at least the World Championships isn't months removed, because that would drive me crazy if you had the entire seasons and then you wait 2 months and then you have the World Championships. Something about that just wouldn't sit quite right. So
but how awesome in terms of like a three act play or like 3-act theater, how awesome was this trifecta of Villars, Chamonix, and Briancon?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, right? Like, it's like Yanya comes out strong, then Chamonix is kind of this weird middle act where Chae-hyun does well, but it might also be because Yanya didn't do well and kind of defeated herself, and then you have this competition in Briancon where Chae-hyun just like stamps her arrival, stamps her dominance on the lead season so far. think of that arc from Villars to Briancon. It's just incredible.
I'm still at a point where I don't know who the protagonist and who the antagonist is, right? Like, it could still be Yanya's game where Chaehyun is like this spoiler that comes in, that like that enemy that pushes you to go harder and harder and walk away with like an incredible victory over, like, against all odds. Or it could be Chaehyun still. But it's really hard to say. I'm so excited to see how it all plays out.
And then at the end, we should say at the end of Briancon, the first person to congratulate Chaehyun when she came down was Yanya. Eddie Falk took this great photo of the two of them hugging each other after Chaehyun had won. So rivalry in quotes. They're very cordial, and I think Chaehyun looks up to Yanya a lot, honestly, because I know. When I talked to Chaehyun, when I interviewed her, she said that she looked up to Margot Hayes in particular. I know she has kind of these idols on the circuit, and I mean, how can you not look up to Yanya? You know, she. So it's been cordial, but there's definitely some competition there, even if it's friendly.
And I think that's something that Yanya will be happy to have. Like, a curious thing about this event, and I'm not sure if it's relevant at all, but a curious thing is there were this is going to be really hard to phrase. Basically, there's a very small set of women that have won Lead World Cups. It's basically a list of 6 people until you get to 2019, right? It's Jessica Pills, Yandy Garnbrett, Jane Kim, Anik Verhoeven, Magdalena Rock, and Mina Markovic, right? Except for Yanya, 5 of those people, Jessica Pills, Jane Kim, Anik Verhoeven, Magdalena Rock, Mina Markovic, none of them were at this event. Mina Markovic was, but she didn't make it through to finals. So you have no other winners aside from Yanya and Siu for the last 4 years. You have to go back to 2013 to find another winner of a Lead World Cup for the women. And so if Yanni goes into that and takes that win with a top, maybe it doesn't feel as good. Maybe she doesn't have anything, to fight for as hard. But having Chaehyun and Natsuki and these other climbers really push it right to the end, that's the kind of thing that I imagine Yanni needs to care about this sport at all. Like, she's not going to stick around if her wins are feeling just like feeling like gimmies.
Yeah, and that's like climbing training 101 in terms of the biggest thing. People ask, how do I get better at climbing? You always tell them, like, find a partner who's better than you, right? Because you will probably find a way to rise to their level, or at least try to. So it's great that Yanya has this competitor, this seeming equal now, because I think it's only going to make both of them better. Yeah, and that's really exciting for us fans.
Yeah. But let's talk about the guys. Starting with semifinals, you mentioned wanting to clip this, and so I did pull some of it. Semifinals was pretty good, and it got in my opinion, most of the right names through. But there was a section that really caused some trouble, and I'm just going to show Alex Migos on this thing. Where's that? Here it is. So, where'd it go? Did I screw this up? All right, everybody talk amongst yourselves.
Sure.
No, here I can pull up. So this is Nishida Hidemasa. So this particular section of trying to get out of these holds was really difficult. The crimp that he just grabbed ended up being very difficult for a lot of climbers to achieve, and mostly because they ended up getting that right foot heel hook before moving on to the next section. Sean Bailey had a really cool beta. I'm going to show this one. Let me find this Migos file. But yeah, so Sean Bailey through here running into kind of the same issue. This is really low down. This is only like hold basically like 20, 21, 22. And so you get in this section, this heel hook was just so attractive for so many climbers. But the heel hook wasn't that good. The toe on the volume that he's playing with right now is also not great. And those handholds are really tough. And so you saw a lot of climbers trying to deal with this stuff, and a ton of big names dropping off in this section. Aside from Alex Migos, who I'm going to show you in a second, Stefano Gazolfi, who went into semifinals in first place. Nathaniel Coleman was right around this area. Sasha Lehman was right around this area. Max Rudiger, Hanwoo Kim, Kaita Doi, like all of these big guys. This little crux boulder section was killing people. And so this is Migos losing it. Actually, this part kind of shows you a little bit more of the climb. So for the men, this climb was pretty serious pretty early on. Like even just this traverse with nothing on the top of that volume was tough. So this was a really cool climb, and we were talking about the setting style, how people mentioned that it's like a simple style and maybe not as exciting. I know Sean McCall mentioned that in one of his Instagram posts where he thought the setting was boring for this event. It's certainly possible that the athletes felt this way, but the finals were excellent to watch, regardless of the setting style. So I can't really fault them. But anyway, this is really where it gets serious. And you're going to see Alex, once he gets this clip, he's going to be attracted to this heel hook, and it starts to lead you in the wrong direction.
I love this, though. I love that the route setters were putting a crux very low. We don't usually see that. It's disappointing in some ways, certainly for the competitors, but it shakes things up, right? Like that's why do we always have to have the cruxes? There's Alex falling on that. Why do we always have to have the cruxes midway point or above? Put some in the teens in terms of the hold numbers. Put some at hold number 20 or whatever. Get it spicy from the very beginning, because that only adds to the unpredictability of the event.
Yeah, it's hard. Like I'm not a fan of unpredictability necessarily, and cruxes kind of do, because it is a bummer to see somebody like Alex Migos and Stefano Gazolfi like drop out that early. I think what I liked the most about this event was that steady burn, where like finals were a great example, where the bottom 2/3 of the climb weren't really at issue, right? Everybody was able to do the moves, and you were just building up that pump, and that you're getting tired, and then it came down to the head wall. You come around the corner, and now we have this chapter of 10 to 12 moves. This is where we find out like how long you've lasted. That was really exciting for me, even without the flashy moves that are gimmies. And the crux like this, I don't know if I'm a huge fan of that kind of thing. I don't think the setters realized it was that much of a crux. Like, I don't think they would have put it there, especially if they thought like, oh, can we take out the first place seed in qualifiers? That was obviously not their intention, although Stefano also botched it last week in semifinals as well with a crazy low fall. So maybe he's just got a problem with the lower half of climbs. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he warms up in the bottom half of a climb, and if there's anything too hard, it just knocks him out.
I see what you mean. I mean, it certainly is exciting when the crux comes at the head wall, the spotlights are there, the crowd's looking there. There's something just about that in terms of the climb itself culminating with a really difficult head wall section. That's really cool. But at the same time, I like those spreads. When you look at the results of any final, I like it when you see like one competitor tops, the next competitor's at, a high number, something plus, the next number didn't get the plus, and it goes all the way down to like the teens or the 20s, sure. Right? Like you see somebody fell at like all over the wall. That's just exciting. I like the spread.
I do like that part. Yeah, I just don't know if that would because this was like 9 different climbers fell basically at this section. Like that's like a pretty that's just manslaughter straight up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And I think you're right. I don't think the setters intended it to be that difficult. Who knows if maybe it was a friction issue, or if if it got chalky by the end, because I know like Magos was one of the last guys to climb, right? Or at least certainly in the later bunch. But I don't know. It would have been cleaned, at the midway point. So
yeah, I think it was probably just. I don't know if the route setters would have expected the climbers to depend so hard on that heel hook on the right side when there was a foot for you, even though it was a bad foot. Using that bad foot or the toe hook that Nishida threw in, those were far more stable ways of getting to that hold. And I think the climbers were just so tempted by this heel that they were willing to take that risk of the off balance throw, and the hold was just too bad. Once you made that big move, you lost the tension in your foot for the most part, so you cut off, and now you're crimping on that like slopey little square crimp, and it was just over. So I think it was just kind of one of those issues of, as a route setter, you're fairly certain that people will make the right choice, but then once you're climbing on the wall, you're kind of tempted by you just get tempted by those comfortable positions, or those things that you think are going to work well for you. So
yeah,
but on the opposite end, the men's final, which was another excellent climb. Who should we start with on this one? Let's just start with Nishida, because interestingly, I think it was 6 of the finalists, basically the top 5. Everybody fell within 5 moves of each other. So this was like a really tight final, right?
Yeah.
The bottom 3 climbers all tied, then 4th and 5th tied, and then 2nd and 3rd tied. And then you just had Nishida or Hidemasa who broke through. So let's just get like an overview of this climb. with Hidemasa's send. No, that's the wrong one. This is the right one here. So again, sped up 2 times. Watching the men's final, how did this one compare to you compared to the women's final?
Well, it's tough to say because we didn't see anybody. We certainly didn't have the flashy. We didn't get to see any of the flashiness that we saw at the women's at the very top, right? Mm-hmm. But I liked this route a lot. It looked to me like it got really pumpy really quickly.
Yeah.
Right around, like, and maybe that's a little different than the women's route, which you had said, and I think accurately, that it just kind of was like really sustained, hard technical stuff until you get to the head wall. It looked like there were some cruisy moves, and then it just got really hard. There was actually, I know Sean Bailey in particular, there was a section that gave a lot of the competitors trouble, even if they worked through it or not. There was just some tricky clipping sequences.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe what's contributing to me thinking it got pumpy really quickly. There was just a lot of guys seemed to struggle with finding the right body position to do the clips.
Yeah. Just to point out, this is the winner of the comp on his finals run. He was in 8th place going into finals, right? So he's the first climber out. So we had no real idea of whether or not this was going to, when he climbed this, it didn't faze me. He made it look so good up to where he got that it did not cross my mind that he would end up winning the comp with this burn, right? Like it looked like a casual burn. And I started thinking in my head, I was like, oh my God, here we go again. The first guy out gets so close to the top. Are we going to see some more ties? But it turns out that right now, as you see, this is basically where everybody was getting stopped. He gets this left hand, and it's the right hand that he crosses into. Or sorry, I guess he goes Gaston.
He bumps
but
it, yeah.
That right there, that was the high point by a move, right? And I wish I had a better idea of that going into this, because it turns out that that's the winning attempt for this entire thing. But the cruxiness of that area around that clip, I think I've got Sean Bailey, and this kind of gives a better idea of. So this is him just turning into the head wall. And this was the area where a lot of these climbers fell. Was they're going to get into this yellow volume just to Sean's right. You're having to make decisions about whether or not you want to clip. Some people did. Some people waited. You've got this high left foot up by your face, which was causing some trouble with balance. And moving out to the right for the next move to that giant yellow feature, a lot of people started doubting their body positioning and really getting their feet high. Sean, for instance, he's going to get that right foot up and try and throw out to the right, but it just wrecks his balance and doesn't let him transition out to the right, just pushes him off too far. And that's where so many climbers ended up falling. It was a really cruxy section, and it didn't look like anything for Hidemasa.
No, he cruised it, and if you looked at Sean Bailey there, he I think at first he gets his foot high, and then he puts it low, and then he tries it high again, and then he goes for the right hand lunge. That just illustrates that. Yeah, I had the same reaction when Nishida climbed it. I was thinking, it's gonna be one of those finals where we see like 3 tops or 4, and it's gonna.
I was so close to tweeting something snarky about like, oh, here we go again, blah blah blah, like. Sound the alarm, we're gonna have like a 3-way count back or whatever.
Yeah, I did too. I was really sure of it, and then I think as other competitors came out and struggled through it, I kind of realized, there's actually some really tricky clipping stuff here that Nishida just it was cruise control for him. Like he didn't really even look troubled at all until going for the move that he fell on.
Yeah, so speaking of clipping, the big moment for me was Sean McCall at this event, and I was like, I haven't been this happy to see Sean in a while. Like, first of all, for some reason, there was kind of a bit of a pause before he got on the wall in finals. And I really like this theme that the IFSC has had of trying to get a camera peeking into the call zone where the climbers are making their last preparations before coming out. And Sean looked super in the zone, which is fairly common, but he wasn't talking to anybody else. When he came out to the stage, he gave a very short wave to the audience, whereas normally I feel like he would be trying to play up to the audience, and he just looked so much more focused. And that's the kind of Sean I really want to see, because as much as I love how much of an ambassador he is for the sport and how much of a showman he is, I feel like sometimes it detracts from his climbing maybe. And I know his style is inherently showy. He's one of the shorter climbers. He's developed a jumpy, very dynamic style, and that's awesome to watch. But sometimes I don't enjoy the decision making that he makes. Whereas in this final, it felt like he was more grounded and it felt like he was more of a competitor actually chasing after something. And again, I don't know the guy well. It's not like I can get inside his head, but I was excited going into this climb. And then it came to this incredible head of like classic Sean McCall decision making of I'm going to try and be efficient by doing something very daring. Here he is in kind of the position meant to clip this quick draw. And he decides he's going to go for an around the world. He's just going to depart and he's going to come back to this clip. And at this point, the commentators are wondering, is he in a relevant clipping position anymore? He decides to keep going and he's calculated that he thinks he can clip this from much higher. And of course, he is obviously pumped. He's shaking between every move. The elbows are starting to come out. The feet are super sketchy. And he thinks he can clip it from this half moon thing. He's going to try and adjust his feet, but he ends up slipping off. And note that as he falls, he smacks that draw. And there was some speculation that he might have done that to prove that it was a relevant clipping position. But look at this guy freak out right now. This got me so psyched. He was just screaming into the audience. I don't even know what kind of clap that is. But I was in just like, this made me so happy seeing Sean in that mode going into World Championships. Like, that's the guy I want to see. I want it to look like he's, like 20 years old again, or however old he was when he was trying to win ABS Nationals and breaking onto the scene. Like, I want this guy to be really hungry because this is a big deal for him. And for all of us, like just as Canadian climbers, we do want to see success. So that was my favorite part of the men's final was just Sean like showing a different kind of beast that I haven't seen from him maybe ever.
He's one of my favorite climbers to watch. We've talked about this before, just as kind of an old school fan, as a guy who was a fan back in the ABS days, and Sean was a part of that. It was kind of like, for me, when I was watching this, it was kind of like sort of in Sean we trust, because I was thinking okay, he should clip now. And then it's like, okay, he didn't clip. He's going to do another move. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll trust that he knows what he's doing. Yeah. I'll trust that he thinks he can clip from the next position. And then he'd tweak his body a little bit and he wouldn't clip. And I think, okay, well, I'll trust that he can get it better from here. It's like he does the drop knee and then he doesn't clip. And so I just kept trying to have faith that he would know what he was doing and know that he was going to find a good spot to clip, because look at how far away his hips are from that clip before he moves them in there. That's like probably, a couple meters. And so he was really dancing around it. And I'll give him credit. I think maybe that was his veteran savvy, tapping the clip on his way down, hitting it as he fell, as a way, the commentators mentioned this too, as a way to show the judges that, hey, yeah, I could reach the clip from this position. You should give me credit for, or don't detract from.
Yeah, don't dock
moving
me
away
points.
from it.
Yeah.
Do you think the dialed in Sean, the dialed in version of him, is because he knows that the World Championships are looming, and specifically the Olympic qualification? Is this him kind of slipping into like a sort of a different? Almost like a fighter, right? Before a big fight, they kind of they sort of have to get into that headspace. And we know that the Olympics has been a big deal for Sean ever since it was announced. Do you think that's?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, like, I guess the 2 points I'd make is, first of all, last week he didn't have a good week in Chamonix, and I think that probably pisses him off. I think he feels like he could have climbed much better in that final. And then the other thing is, and I don't know how much this plays into his head. Like, I think speaking to the Canadian coach a couple months ago, they were fairly confident that even if Sean McCall and Alana Yip, the two leading Canadian candidates for the Olympics, even if those two didn't qualify for the Olympics at the World Championships, they were extremely confident that they would have a high enough ranking to get them to the Toulouse qualifier and potentially earn their spot there, and with a fairly good chance. I think now that those couple World Cups have gone by and we've had some in every discipline, and Sean is now in a spot where he knows that he's got the ranking to go to Toulouse, I think at this point maybe it lets him relax a little bit about his performance at each World Cup, and now he can focus on the World Championships in a couple weeks and then Toulouse in December, rather than maybe at some position he was worried that he would have to put up like a really serious fight through the rest of the lead season just to earn that spot at Toulouse. Again, based on what the coach was saying months ago, they were probably more confident than I'm making him sound. But there's got to be some level of, okay, I can relax and just focus on having a good time and not get in my head too much about rankings because I have earned those rankings now. I'm set. I think I can't remember. I want to say like 11th right now in the combined ranking. I could be totally wrong, but so maybe those two things. Again, I have never been a competitor myself. My understanding of a competitive psyche is non-existent, but those are a couple things that just noticing, a bad performance last week and a certain level of, okay, you've done what you have to do in this area. Now you can focus on, just climbing today, like climb hard, have a good time. So, but I want to see more of this guy.
Yeah, and credit to him because I think just a year or 2 years ago, I think there was, at least on my end, I know that there was questions like, well, is he going to be too old for the Olympics? Is he one of those guys that's just going to kind of, it's just unfortunate. He's just a little bit too old. Are there going to be some Canadian up-and-comers that kind of steal that spot from him, for lack of a better word, after he's been such an ambassador for all these years? And all the credit in the world to Sean because he has proven that he's like back in top form, right? I mean, he's making finals. So I think he should be on anybody's short list of competitors as most likely to get one of those qualification spots at the Worlds, if not, in Toulouse. It seems like we have kind of the old Sean back.
I was one of those like huge doubters for the last couple of years of whether or not this could come together because he went through, injuries, changes in his life where he stopped living in France and had to come back to Canada, which has a much shallower pool of talent. Nobody near Sean's level to inspire him. The facilities aren't as good either. And it felt like it would have been a very steep uphill climb for him to come back to this level of performance. And I didn't think it would be possible at that age after all the success he'd had. I didn't know how he was going to find the motivation for it. He had started doing that Ninja Warrior stuff and I just wasn't sold. But I mean, talk about absolutely 100% proving me wrong. This looks amazing. So yeah, and I should point out that like the risk was never really of other Canadian climbers coming up to steal the mantle. Like there really isn't anything going on below him. There are some strong boulderers who maybe, I don't know, like there's nobody certainly on a combined all-around level in all disciplines that could come anywhere near Sean. And you see it in the World Cup results every single time, right? And some of the most talented climbers in the country don't even bother showing up to World Cups or trying at nationals. Like we've got some talent out there occasionally might compete with Sean, but they just don't care. So it's Sean's it. He's our only hope on the men's side.
Well, if Cheon has taught us anything, it's that sometimes people come out of nowhere. They come out of out of nowhere. They come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
And
well, I'm like at all the youth nationals. I'm seeing what's going on, and I haven't seen anybody convincing just yet. Right? Like we had some really promising people from this 2003 year come up, and of course they're not international. They're national phenoms. They're incredible. That's not a word, incredible, but they're amazing at a national level, but internationally they have a lot of growth to go through. So that's just how that is. I'm trying to think of a couple other things that we didn't get to talk about this event. Oh, we do have, so one thing, but we have to talk about the stream quality. Because as you can probably tell, I'm pretty hyped on this event. I had a really good time watching it. I was pretty close to turning off the computer and walking away and going for ice cream. The stream lagged out. I think it was probably, I don't know, it was probably no more than like 5 to 8 minutes. I don't think it reached 10 minutes of being down, but it just went, it was over. And you just watch all of the spectators just disappear after that first like minute of it being gone. And we didn't get to watch Ashima climb at all. We missed the first part of Yutong Zhang. Who was I think it was Mia Krampel who we missed the top half of. Yep. If I'm remembering this right. But it was, it really sucked. Apparently this has been an issue in Briancon before. It sounded like there were some issues at the paraclimbing event, which I only watched some of. I didn't see any dropping at all. But I don't really know what to say about this one because everybody acknowledges that it's not good when the stream drops, right? Like it's not like we're telling anybody like any new information. It is either down to It's just down to budget, straight up, right? Like the IFSC has a long history of not having the resources required to guarantee a perfect broadcast. And you and I have talked about how good the season has been for that. Like the broadcasts have been pretty close to immaculate. But then every once in a while, this thing comes up and it's clear that there wasn't one of those redundant plan Bs ready to go. We had to wait through that. And at this point, I'm assuming it isn't due to them being oblivious or just bad decision making. You just have to say, hey, the budget isn't there, and whatever went wrong, they didn't have the budget to have a second uplink, or who knows? Like honestly, somebody could have just cut a cable somewhere. We don't know the background of it. It just sucks. It just sucks for the spectators. They know that there's nobody to scold. It's just a bummer.
Yeah, it's like you can't criticize the IFSC too hard, because it's like they only have the resources that they have. If they don't have the money or whatever it is, they don't have the money. And and I know I've talked to people that have worked for the IFSC. I know that they're troubled by this just like we are. Yeah. Obviously, they hate when this happens too. It seems to me, from my very, very limited knowledge of how broadcasting works, it's almost like there are two options that the IFSC goes with. Either they just do the live stream themselves, or in some cases, maybe a country will want to have kind of the local TV network handle it and broadcast it on the local TV station. Yeah. And the IFSC live stream will just kind of borrow that and broadcast it. Mm-hmm. And it definitely seems like whenever it's the local TV station, then the infrastructure is a lot better. Maybe. It seems like that those streams, we never have any issues with those. So we don't have to dwell on this point. It was just unfortunate. It was too bad for me from an American standpoint. I know there was a lot of hype for Ashima climbing, and I shouldn't just say American.
She's one of the biggest celebrities in climbing.
Yeah, she's a global superstar in the climbing scene. So it's just too bad, because I was so excited to watch her climb, and then there was that glitch, and you and I were texting about it. There was like the 10-minute downtime, and then it comes back, and they're talking about Ashima's attempt in the past tense, and I was like, "Wait, what? Like she already climbed?" And on top of that, they said that Ashima timed out at hold number 36, and I rewatched the broadcast, and Charlie Bosco definitely mentions that she timed out at 36. No other competitor who climbed after that was anywhere close to timing out when they reached that hold. They were all at like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So that makes me even more curious to see Ashima's attempt.
Hold on, are you saying that when did you rewatch the final? Like, are you saying that the replay doesnn't have the Ashima climb in it at all?
It did not when I watched it last night.
Oh shit! I'm just gonna double check, because that genuinely sucks.
Yeah, I was hoping that they would find a different feed, a different camera, something. But as of last night, it was the one that was up. The replay that was uploaded was not the. It did not have Ashima. Yeah, but double check me, because I want to make sure we're accurate about this.
Well, while I look at this, somebody brought up on Twitter that God, I got to get through these ads first. That apparently the Olympic channel, so the IFSC broadcasts on their own channel, but also on the Olympic channel, which I think is through olympicchannel.com or whatever. It's not their YouTube stream, it's something else. And apparently that stream kept going, according to one person on Twitter. I don't think many people watch it on the Olympic channel. I really don't know. But if that's true, then maybe we should start watching it over there instead. I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Well, it gets tricky, because I remember last year they tried some of the Olympic Channel stuff. The thing that would always frustrate me about that is you couldn't replay it.
Sure.
It would just be, you'd watch it and then it was over. So and I like to, as you do, I like to go back and kind of watch these comps, or at least pieces of them. And
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ashima is here. So they've managed to find an upload that has it. So actually, I'm just gonna. You were talking about time. Yeah, she's timing out.
Well, that's interesting. That's a new development, because I also
Where did she rest? I don't want to watch this entire thing, but where did she spend all of her resting time? Probably on that giant rest, right?
On that giant, but everybody rested there. And so I was thinking, I was like, did she rest for minutes there? Which even for Ashima is a long. She's typically a pretty methodical, slow climber, but even for her, resting for a long time, minutes on end, is uncharacteristic. So I'll have to rewatch it. It was not that they did not have that that version of it up as of yesterday.
Sure.
So
Yeah. No, that's just how it goes. But yeah, so kind of like nuts to the stream, kind of a crappy development. It was crazy to see how fast the viewers drop off, but at the same time, those viewers did come back, right? Like I think I saw the peak previous to the stream drop was around 12,000 viewers, and then it dropped down to like 3,000. It did come back to about 10,000 or something like that towards the end. So fortunately, maybe that means that there would have been like 22,000 people watching if the stream hadn't dropped. It was probably a lot of return viewers though. But so fortunately, it was a resilient audience. So like not a total nightmare. And I wanted to ask you this one, John. I brought this up on Twitter very briefly, and I felt kind of bad because I didn't want to sound like somebody that was just like sounding an alarm over something that's not important. But for this particular event, and it sounds like they do this in years past too, they parade the athletes through the crowd up to the stage before finals. So they basically have like the flags for all the countries and the athletes and the MCs at the front, like kind of helping clear a path. And they go through this crowd of like a few thousand people, and then they get to the stage. And it was kind of funny because like some people in the crowd are like holding out their hand for a high five, and some athletes like get it and some don't. Some of them are just like walking, like trying to just like move on with their lives. Obviously antisocial climbers. But I made this comment saying, I basically just said like, hey, there's no security for these climbers as they walk through this crowd. And my instant reaction was like, that's really dumb. Like if you're going to walk athletes through this crowd, you should just have like one security guard at the front, one at the back, or something, or just don't do it. Because for sure there's no metal detectors. There's no like security probably at the entrance to this crowd area. And on top of that, they have the gendarmerie, like basically mountain police doing the belaying. I'm sure you can get two of them to just walk with you for like 2 minutes through a crowd. But I don't want it to sound like I'm being like overly alarmist. And I think maybe it was a bit too much. Like climbing is a fairly balanced sport. Most people that watch these events are like have their head on their shoulders. There's not too many crazies. And in most sports, like crazy people are few and far between. But I am a bit uncomfortable with, as these people become bigger and bigger celebrities, and as you see stuff like what is it, Chaussee DMs or whatever, the female climbers that are kind of like exposing just ludicrous, like just lewd messages that they're getting, extremely inappropriate contact that they're getting from fans online. You do just get nervous that there's going to be one of these people at an event, and I don't know, it feels a little bit off if we're going to have athletes having to walk like side by side with an audience. Hopefully it never happens where there's an incident, but I think it's something to start considering if we're going to force athletes to walk through a crowd, that maybe you just have like 1 or 2 cops just walking with them for those 2 minutes, just to make sure that, if anything, and there were volunteers nearby and there were volunteers holding flags, but I think it's something that I don't know. How do you feel about this? Do you feel like maybe it's overkill right now, but in the future it would make sense? I don't know where I stand on.
No, I think you're very right to bring this up. I think you want to, anything like this. This is a very serious topic, and we have to treat it very seriously. And I think the IFSC should treat it very seriously. You always want to work on the side of prevention, rather than working after the fact, after an incident has happened. And so now is the time when they should. Luckily there has not been an incident yet, but like now is the time when they should put something in place for that, not after something happens and then they, and it's been proven as something that's has potential to cause harm. I think they should have like you said, it's not a big deal. All these venues have security there. I'm
not sure that they do. Like, I'll be honest. I'm not sure that they all do. Like the closest thing you get is you've got people checking passes to get into like the coaches area. Like those first couple tiers of seating right in front of the stage, those are controlled in terms of you have to be an official, you have to be a judge, you have to be part of one of the teams with one of your competitors in finals. But at the events that I've been to, that hasn't been a security guard. It hasn't been law enforcement. It's been an event volunteer, right? Just checking to make sure you have the right lanyard or whatever. So I'm not sure that security is like a given at these events.
And Maybe you're right. Maybe I spoke too soon. I think when I was thinking security, I meant just some sort of authority type of figures. Maybe not actual security guards. But I don't really think it would be that hard to get. I'm thinking here in the States, even at like if you go to a mall or something like that, because for instance, when I worked at a bookstore years ago, we would have somebody there who would stand by the door, a security detail. Mm-hmm. And what it was a police officer who, when he wasn't on duty, he or she wasn't on duty, they can kind of like put their name out there as someone that can be hired as kind of like freelance security detail, or, right. And so you basically hire an off-duty police officer to just stand there by the door. And in that case, it was to prevent theft, but I don't see why something like that couldn't be utilized here to prevent any number of incidents that could happen. Climbing is getting more and more popular. With that, these climbers are becoming more and more of celebrities, not only to the climbing fan base itself, but also just to the sports world. Mm-hmm. You're seeing these competitors, you're seeing their faces now on Olympic promotion, Olympic advertisement all over the world. So the sooner that something like this could be done, the better at these events.
Yeah. And it, again, like it really just, it's not something I've thought about at any of these events before, but just in the nature of this comp is they walk you through the crowd, and that just like, I don't want to use the word triggered, but that kind of like set off different alarm bells, because it was just so, it's not something I've seen in a while. Apparently it's been happening at Briancon. Apparently I haven't watched that. So, and I don't want to sound too alarmist. I don't want to sound like crazies are inherently everywhere. And I don't want to sound like, I'm some crazy ass American like you putting cops outside of bookstores or whatever you guys do in the States. It did just kind of something to at least think about for the future.
Let's state the obvious. Sorry to cut you off here, but we think of these as superstar competitors, but at the same time, they're many of them are kids, right? Like they're 15-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids. So I think this is something that, I think you're right to bring this up. It's a big topic. It's an important topic, because, talk about little things that could just, I don't know, really tarnish the sport's growth and stuff. Your mind starts to wander a number of ways, and that's no good. So
yeah, no, for sure. Let's give our grades for this event.
Yeah, well, I'll real quickly, I'll run down how the Americans did. I wrote that down.
Yeah, do it.
So Ashima was 5th in the women's division. Ashima was 5th. Margot Hayes was 13th. Brooke Rabitou was 28th. Kyra Condi was 44th, and Sienna Kopp was 55th. In the men's division, Sean Bailey was 6th. And what's interesting to note about Sean is that in VLRs he was 54th, and in Chamonix he was 24th. So to go from those to 6th, I think that's really pretty remarkable. That's kind of like an underreported story about this event. It's certainly on the American side, is just how Sean really, he really came to life at this event. It was great.
We were talking about how he's had those 2 Instagram posts of trying to like understand his role in the sport and how he feels about competition climbing. And there's like just a funny juxtaposition between those 2 posts and then the one that comes right after where he's like, fucking finals, baby. Like, just a little bit of success, it gets him psyched up. So I'm glad he had this moment. That's really important. And I hope we see more of him. I was really looking forward to him, like really throwing down in finals. It's too bad that he couldn't make a little bit more progress, because that could have been really exciting with him coming out last.
Well, I 6th place after being 24th and 54th. I think personally, I think this was awesome. And to your point, it's like the emotional highs and lows of elite level competition that mortals like us cannot relate to.
Yeah, man.
Right. But, okay. So he was 6th. Drew Ruana, who also had a really good, weekend. He was 12th. Nathaniel Coleman was 14th. Jesse Grouper was 56th, and Zach Galla was 59th. So that is the tail of the tape for the American team. Which the only other note that I said is this is a great halfway point for the lead season for the Americans, way better than their start to the bouldering season. So
that's true. Yeah, we're actually seeing some of them get through. So that's
in the
finals.
Which was a big thing. We, I remember in the bouldering season we were saying there were no Americans in the finals of the bouldering, and we were kind of waiting for it. It never really happened, but we're only at the halfway point, and we've already seen it a couple of times. So
yeah,
yeah,
not too much to report on the Canadian side, so I'm just gonna skip it. Yeah, I love all these Canadian climbers. I know some of them pretty well, and some of them I don't know that well at all. But I'm not gonna. If something amazing happens, we'll cover it. But anyway.
Yeah. Grades. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first, I guess. I think what week was it that I gave it like a C minus? Was that Villars? Yeah, I think I gave like a C minus to Villars. I think I gave a C plus to Villars. Briancon, I think I gave a B plus, and then I upped it to an A just because Mike Langley mentioned us. And then, so anyway, that was really like more of like a B plus event. This is an A straight up. Like aside from the stream dropping, I had so much fun, especially watching the women's event and having the women's side come out last and having that incredible story right at the end was so incredible. The men's round wasn't bad either. Like it was exciting getting to see how they were managing that first crux down low, and then also at the top of how are you going to deal with this thing that's throwing off everybody? When it came down to those last couple climbers, it was really exciting climbing. And then, of course, for the women, it was just incredible. Genuine edge of your seat, like just gritting your teeth. Can't wait to find out how this goes. And it ends with a win for another rising star. So, yeah. Great comp.
I think it was a great comp, too. I think I almost have 2 grades depending on whether I'm factoring in the stream or not, because as we said, as an American wanting to watch Ashima, like that was a real bummer. So I think with if I'm counting the stream against it, the stream problems, probably like a C plus. I mean, that's just, I was just sitting there waiting for the stream to start, and that was. But if aside from the stream stuff, if we leave that out, I think I probably give this a B plus, as high of a B plus as I could without it being an A. And that's I think that sounds maybe like I didn't enjoy it as much, but I love the event. The reason I give it a B plus though is because I think it was a little bit you just have to take away a little bit of it because it did not have some of the big names.
Okay.
Right? Like Adam Ondra was not here. And so who knows how he would have done. Jakob Schubert was not here. They were conspicuous by their absence, right? Like that, they were really missed. Like you notice when those guys are gone, not only for the quality of climbing, but also just for their star power on the circuit. On the women's side, no. Oh, and then there were a bunch of other top name Japanese competitors who weren't there for the men. And then on the women's side, Akio Noguchi wasn't there, Miho Nanaka wasn't there.
Well, we talked about Jessie Pills, Jane Kim, like all those people out. Yeah, Magda Rock with the injury, although she hasn't been like a top form. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and so it's almost like I don't want to judge the comp for what it was not. I want to judge it for what it was. What it was is a phenomenal competition. But in the context of just giving grades to every competition, in the context of the rest of the circuit, the rest of the season, I missed having those big names here.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's totally fair. I think that's reasonable. I think for the men's side of it, like missing those celebrities, I think I gave into it after seeing like Magos and those guys fall down low. I'm like, well, whatever. It's how it goes. And also having Sean go through to finals, that obviously placates me as a Canadian. So yeah, too bad. Sorry things didn't work out for not seeing your athlete or whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? But yeah, so yeah, I thought it was a great one. I think it was the best one so far. I think it beat Meiringen for me. Just because we had those last 3 climbers of suspense. So that was like 15 minutes of viewing time of genuine suspense, whereas Meiringen on that final boulder crack problem, you had 5 athletes who were just flailing and it felt like the comp might end in a dud. Like it wasn't building suspense, it was making you zone out after having to watch 4 minutes of each compliner just like not getting anywhere. And then the Ondra thing was kind of a nice surprise. So this was like all the build up, like 15 minutes of build up and the payoff. Whereas Meiringen was not quite that much of a build up. But
yeah, if somebody is watching this and they don't have time to watch the whole finals replay, just watch from Janja onward. Just watch Janja's
watch the whole women's final, because I think the excellent build up to the context of that head wall was the other climbers. So I would say try and watch the whole thing, but if not, watch Janja just for seeing it in first person. I know we showed most of it here already, but yeah. Yeah,
Janja, then Natsuki Tani, and then Cheon. Just the 3 final women. Like you said, of course, like if you can watch the whole finals to have context. But if you only have 15 minutes, just watch those 3 it was just awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to be off for a few weeks because we're going to be off for what, 3 weeks? Yeah. So we're going to have 3 weeks with no debrief. I'm going to post some other stuff in the meantime. I'm going to try and make this plastic weekly again with some gym stuff and then also some interviews that I'm really excited to be releasing. But we figured we should just end off talking about some stuff we're excited about for the World Championships, which is what we're going to be talking about next. The next debrief we do is going to be covering like 3 separate disciplines all in one episode. So, God, that's going to be a lot, man. It's going to be like a 2-hour 2-parter or something.
It's going to be just to tell the viewers, if they don't know, the World Championships with the Olympics, the combined format of the Olympics and whatnot. What the World Championships are doing is they're having a lead portion. I think they did this in 2018 too. Mm-hmm. They're having a lead portion. They're having a bouldering portion. They're also having a combined portion that has its own lead and bouldering and also speed. Yeah. So it's just a massive event. I think the bouldering and the lead portion start around like August 11th, and I think the combined stuff happens like the 18th. It's like the next week later. Next week. Yeah. So it's a huge event, and the thing that's going to have the Olympic implications will be the combined portion. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of comp climbing to watch, which is great. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. So you brought up the idea of just mentioning the top 3 things we're looking forward to. And you brought it up, so I kind of want to give you, well, I don't know. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
Well, I'll say this. I was curious to get your thoughts on 3 things that you were looking forward to or excited about the most about the World Championships. I said that maybe we would think of 3 things aside from like how Cheon does and the Cheon showdown, because I think that's kind of a given. I think that would be probably number 1 on both of our lists. But yeah, I'd be curious, whatever 3 you came up with, go for it. You can go first.
Let's see if we can do this in exactly a minute each, so we can clip this and then use it as like the little promo videos we put out. All right.
Each of us take a minute.
We're gonna try and take each 60 seconds.
Okay, we're on the clock.
I'm just gonna try and find a 25. Okay. So the 3 things I'm looking forward to going into World Championships, first of all, is that in the combined format, the bouldering format has changed from last year, okay? So rather than taking 6 athletes into finals, they're now going to take 8. And instead of there being 4 boulder problems, there's going to be 3, which feels really weird to me. It's not something I would normally do. I think more boulders is better. But just to keep athletes probably in good shape through the comp, they've decided to make that change. So I want to see how that goes. The second thing is, this is going to be the beefiest roster of the year, ideally, right? It should be all the stars. It should be the top 10s of each of the ranking. So we're finally getting that comp with everybody, because we've seen so many climbers out with injuries or skipping events once they achieve their ranking. Like, now we're actually going to see the huge lead comp, the huge speed comp, the huge bouldering. And I think it's going to be the most stacked field we've had all season. And then lastly, we said we weren't going to talk about Chaehyun or Yanya, but Yanya can still sweep the boulder season with the World Championship as a kicker, and that's so exciting for me. I did it. That's exactly 60 seconds.
Oh man, everything you said, I wanted to respond.
You can respond now if you want, and then you can mention yours after.
Yeah. Okay. So the bouldering format, the change is very that is exciting. Doesn't it feel like in the past
feels
5
like bullshit? That's what it feels like. Well, I'm not psyched.
Doesn't it feel like we just keep, like, there's been just all these different formats that maybe it's a little different, because like I'm looping in the United States into that, because they changed their national bouldering format with like zone. They started doing like 5-point holds, 10-point holds. It just seems like we've had a lot of format changes in the last few years. Hopefully at some point it'll kind of plane out, so we can start to just see years after year comparison, because every time there's
it fucks up your history. It
totally does. It gets hard to, and I know that's something that also plagues like speed climbing with the different height of the walls and stuff. As somebody who likes history and appreciates history, I just hope we can land on something and then stick with it, because like you said, it's just going to mess with looking at past results. Which the combined format might throw a wrench in that too, because we might not do the combined format at all after Tokyo.
Totally, man. It could be over. No, that's super fair.
So what was your second point again? Remind me.
Second point was it's going to be the stacked field, right?
And that kind of plays into the third point about Yanya still potentially being able to sweep the bouldering. I mean, it's just the amount of superstars that are going to be here. It's I wish it was happening this weekend because I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, man. Okay, before you do yours, because we're getting the like desync where your voice and audio are kind of switching. I want to cancel your Skype call and we're going to start it again, and then we're going to do your clip. Okay, so we're just going to do this. It's going to be in the video. Too bad, no editing. Screw it. See you in 1 second. Okay, so I can't even. We just crashed everything. But anyway, John, let's see if you can do in 1 minute your top 3 things you're looking forward to at the World Championships.
Okay, here we go. The 3 things I'm looking forward to at the World Championship. The first one, it's in Japan. They're going to take place in Japan. Japan has been so dominant for this entire year. I don't think, in my opinion, there's no question about whether Japan will get 2 athletes, 2 on the men's side, 2 on the women's side, into the World Championships. I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of who. I am really, really curious to see which Japanese competitors make it there because the Japanese team has incredible depth. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'm really curious to see what the crowd is like in Japan for these World Championships. And the reason I say that is because this has Olympic implications, not just for Tokyo 2020, but also with the inclusion of, or the tentative inclusion of climbing in Paris 2024. One of the things that the IOC has said is that they want to see how the crowd in Japan and how the Olympic crowd responds to climbing as an Olympic sport. The Olympic crowd's going to be a lot more international than these World Championships, but nonetheless, this World Championships will give us kind of like a little bit of a glimpse about how hyped the crowd is going to be for climbing. Third, lastly, I am very curious about how Ashima Shirishi does because she has all the she won the bouldering nationals in the United States this year. So she's can clearly get on a hot streak in bouldering. She's had a great start to the lead season so far with 5th place finishes at 2 of the events. So she obviously is in top form in lead. And on top of that, in 2018, she placed 5th in the World Championships in the combined event as well. So I know American fans are wondering how the Americans are going to do. I see Ashima as kind of front and center as the person that has the best shot at this point to get an Olympic berth.
I love it. That's a great one on the Ashima thing. That's perfect for you guys. I didn't even mention Sean McCall in mine, but anyway.
Did I get it in under a minute?
I don't think you did. I think you went over a little bit. But whatever, it's all good. Okay, listen, I have to go to work soon. I have to edit this now because we screwed it up. So anyway, that's the last time I try a live refresh of the video. Whatever. We'll figure it next time.
Do you have any quick, real fast response to anything I said?
I am interested in the crowd mostly because I'm rarely impressed by a Japanese crowd. That sounds lame.
I had like a whole 10-minute diatribe that I was going to talk about in terms of how this crowd will give a hint of the Olympic crowd and all this. Yeah. We don't have time to get into it, but it's something I'm curious to see.
No, I'm excited too. For me, I think the ones I mentioned are the ones I'm most excited about. I think yours are also super valid. But the big ones for me are having the entire field there and Yanya being able to still like do the genuine sweep of a boulder season. That gets me hyped. So yeah. But anyway, let's cut this off because I got to clip this and figure out how to edit like a pro. So anyway, John, thanks so much for your time today. Make sure you comment and like and subscribe and whatever the people say on YouTube. We appreciate everybody that's been watching so far. We know there's regulars and that means a lot to us as we kind of like keep experimenting with this and building it up. So anyway, we'll see you guys in 3 weeks for the next debrief. It'll be at the World Championships. And until then, enjoy whatever other videos we put out. Anyway, have a great week, guys. Bye.